Middle-aged grind coming you to today from South Louisiana, and it's a little brisk outside. I got my flannels going on, got some nice cool weather in the air, and today I want to share a topic with you. And it's a little different from what I normally do, but it's stuff that interests me, and it may interest you. I'm a big true crime fan. I don't know if that's the right word, fan, but it interests me on mysteries, on stuff that people are looking for closure and still haven't have it after several years. And I'm going to share three cases with you today that occupied a lot of my time and my free time that I've looked into. And maybe this is something that interests you, maybe it's not. And I'm going to share them with you. And two of them you probably heard about. The third one you may or may have not, but they're still all officially unsolved. The first one, and I'm going to go into this, and I'd say probably, I really got into this case, I don't even know why, about 3 years ago, and that's the JonBenét Ramsey case. I must say, everyone watching this is probably very, or at least a little familiar. Happened back in 1996. Poor little girl was killed in her home in Boulder, Colorado. I was 14 at the time, and it's weird that this happened Christmas night into going to December 26th in Boulder. I remember that year. I remember that Christmas Eve by my grandparents' house. I was a freshman in high school. You know, I remember kind of when that happened. My sister is her age. They were both born in 1990. And it's amazing to think that it's going to be 28 years ago this happened. And officially unsolved. I don't, and my honest opinion and everything I've seen, I don't think we ever going to truly get to the bottom of this one. I'll say this, if you have not read the ransom note that was left at the crime scene by supposedly the kidnappers, I would suggest you go Google it and read that. It is the War and Peace of ransom notes, and there's just a lot of weird stuff with this case. There's a guy on YouTube I follow. His name is Nick True Crime Rocket Science. He's out of South Africa. He has probably the most in-depth analysis. He has several videos going into some deep stuff on this. I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of this one. Like I say, I'm not going to make my opinion known on here, other than the fact that there's a lot of twists and turns in this case here, and it's a shame that they, a poor little girl died, and there was no resolution to it, and it was very, very unnecessary, and it's a very shame. But check out Nick's True Crime Rocket Science if you want to learn more about that case. The second case I want to talk about, and I recently got Netflix to watch the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. Even though it wasn't that great of a fight, Tyson's 58 years old, but man, he looked old, But kudos to him for getting out there doing what he did at that age. I mean, I was getting tired for him watching that, but hadn't had Netflix in a while. Saw a very thing about the Zodiac Killer, second case. This was in the 60s and maybe the 70s in California, around the Bay Area mostly. And according to this documentary on Netflix, they think they're getting closer to an answer, and it probably who they thought it was all along. But there's some DNA testing being done on a supposed weapon. What a fascinating case, though. Terrified the state. This guy who committed murders over the years literally sent letters, correspondence to the newspapers, to the police, with these cryptograms, these ciphers that people uncode, and probably responsible for at least 10 murders. They were mostly young couples, kind of like in lovers' lanes or beaches, and walked up to them with a big mask, and shot and stabbed different people. Officially unsolved, but watch that Netflix documentary if you have it. It just came out. They think they're getting close for an answer on that one. And I hope, it is a long time ago, but there are people still alive who were affected by this. There's one guy who lived and attacked. His girlfriend did not. He's still around. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to get closure in that case, and it's possible that could happen. I want to talk about another case, and this one, a little bit less under the radar, but interesting nevertheless. Everybody knows 9/11. That's in our wheelhouse. You watching this video, I'm sure you're probably alive when that happened. I mean, I was in college. Another thing I'll say too, if you visit New York, which I love New York, family loves it, great place, the 9/11 memorial, it is the one thing a must do over anything. I would recommend that. You have to do that. Very powerful. The museum actually sits on the site of the two towers. It's just something, you walk through there and it's very, very emotional and powerful is the best way. And I saw a piece the other day on 60 Minutes, and believe it or not, when I think they stay away from the stupid politics, they can do some good stories. And this was about the Office of the Medical Examiner of New York City is still doing constantly testing remains because of the victims. I believe there was a little over 2,700 victims in the 9/11 attacks, and a little bit less than half have been identified officially. Okay, and there was a story about two people that recently, and like anything, there's technology constantly coming out now. There's a way where they cryogenically freeze bone fragments, DNA material, and then they can kind of expose the inside and get matches. And recently, this year, there were two more official matches to victims that people finally got the closure that they needed. They knew it kind of happened, but until you know. But there's this one story about this young Indian doctor, and I'm going to say her name, and you can YouTube it. There's a lot of stories. Dr. Sneha and Philip, okay? She was 31 years old. She was a resident doctor, married to another doctor, and they lived at an apartment complex, her and her husband, near the towers, but it wasn't destroyed by the towers. It's still there to this day. Big mystery about this one is, and she's officially now, after several years, been named a victim. Her name's on the wall and everything, pictures in the museum. But there's some mystery if she really died in the towers. And what I'll say about this one is, on 9/10, day before, she officially, that was the last time she was seen. She was shopping at a discount store, clothing store called Century 21 on the night before 9/11. Now, it's known she did not go home that night, and she walked out of the store with some big shopping bags. She bought, according to credit card receipts, bed linens, women's lingerie, some clothes. Walked out of the store with, 2 bags of stuff. She did not go back to her apartment that night, right? Not only did she not go back to her apartment, they don't know where she went. There's no record of where she spent the night of 9/10. And then the morning of 9/11, we all know what happened, but there's no evidence she ever went back to that apartment. So what happened to this lady? It's assumed that possibly she was in the tower because of the proximity of where she lived, but there's a lot more to this story. She had some marital problems. She had some problems at work. There were some apparent substance abuse problems. Did all of that play into her going missing the day before, and 9/11 was kind of like maybe a perfect cover-up? They don't know. They never found her remains. She was supposedly wearing a necklace called a Minu, which is an Indian. She was an Indian American woman, and it would have survived. In other words, the bombing and stuff had she been in there. Never been recovered. And there's a lot of twists and turns to this one, and it's just. And then a guy did a very good podcast about this. Even if she was walking up to the building on 9/11, to her apartment complex, and the building was struck and she saw it, very few people, even though she was a doctor, ran into there, right? And then the buildings didn't fall for, an hour, and no one saw her. There was footage of some of the firemen and stuff in these buildings, and she just wasn't seen. So that's probably the one you probably may have not heard about, but look into Dr. Sneha Ann Phillip. There's stuff out there on YouTube, and you can see some good documentaries. And I know this is an off topic today, but I always feel for people who kind of lost family members, and that's what these three stories is about. Someone perished, and there's no definitive answers to what happened, if that makes sense. And it's just something that's it's kind of I guess you could say is a hobby. And at the end of the day, I hope at all these victims and there's closure and explanation, and that may not come in this lifetime, guys. Like I say, that middle story about the Zodiac, I think there's a possibility they might have a more definitive answer soon. But the other two, the JonBenét and the Sneha Ann Phillip, I don't know if there's ever going to be a true reckoning into what really happened there. But with that said, I wanted to share it to you today. And going into Thanksgiving week, a lot of people are going to be off and traveling, and it's just some kind of hobbies that I have. If you're interested, look into that. And I'll see you real soon on the Middle Age Grind.